Hello, everybody, and welcome to Slammed and Odyssey podcast, where we cover everything Boston Celtics. I'm Meghan Ottolini of WEI and Odyssey, joined, as always, by Esteban Bustillos of GVH and Justin Turpin, also of WEI and Odyssey. We're going to get to the extremely lopsided win that the Celtics handed the Golden State Warriors in their home arena last night, MLK Day. Also, the Celtics and Warriors seem to only play on politically significant days in this calendar year, or I should say in this season. November 6th was the last time that they saw each other. The Celtics lost to the Warriors that night, but shorthanded Warriors last night over in the Bay, and the Celtics had a tremendous win, one that they very much needed because they've been right in the roller coaster. But before we get to that, guys, I wanted to touch on this story that came out from NBC Sports yesterday morning because it made a lot of waves here locally in Boston. Of course, it has to do with the impending sale of the Boston Celtics. So it's been very quiet over the last several months, looking at how this bidding process for a team that a lot of owners around the NBA would like to see sold for as much as $6 billion, because that will help raise the price for future teams, and that benefits all owners across the league. It's been just very quiet when we heard originally from Whit Grousbeck talking on several different channels, be it like all these financial channels, CNBC, Squawk Box, and I don't know, whatever those channels are. And he had indicated that this process would be happening towards the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. They've kept a real tight lid on all of this. We learned from Adam Himmelsbach of the Boston Globe last week that the Celtics were going to accept their formal bidders on January 23rd. So we're recording Tuesday afternoon. That's Thursday. None of the bidders are public right now. We all very heavily assume Steve Pagliuca is going to have a consortium behind him. That's been reported also in the Globe. But he's come out and put statements out there publicly since the sale from the Grousbeck family shares were announced. So then you get this NBC Sports from the national desk, from their national website, little story that comes out, and they describe and reference a Michael Silverman report in the Globe about how there could be as many as 4 or 5 different bidders who are going to be putting in money on this process. But one thing that I think made the most waves out of here is this little note. I'm just going to read directly from it on my phone right now. The Fenway Sports Group, which owns the Boston Red Sox of the MLB, the Pittsburgh Penguins of the NHL, and the Liverpool Football Club of the English Premier League, among other sports ventures, is also expected to make a bid. No attribution there. No sources close to the Celtics say. No sources close to the process. Those who have knowledge of the bidding process. No attribution like that whatsoever. Boom. Not even an hour later, we get Red Sox reporters like Chris Cotillo. We get WEI Odyssey's own Rob Bradford saying the Red Sox do not, like, league sources, industry sources indicate the Red Sox are not involved in this. What is your read of this entire situation? Do you think that there's anything going on with Fenway Sports Group? Because I'll tell you mine in a minute, but I'm going to start with you, Esteban. What did you make of this one line in a story from a national desk?
I think that billionaires are kind of messy is probably the biggest takeaway I have. I mean, I guess it was a little surprising because I had been of the mind from what we had sort of seen, and again, like, this has all been sort of very like smoky back rooms for a while now, right? We knew it was coming, but like as you mentioned, like Pagliuca kind of been the main guy. But I had been in the mind that FSG wasn't for a little while. So that was kind of a surprise. And like you said, the subsequent reporting that no, like, apparently FSG actually isn't, despite what this report is. I mean, I think it's just like the numbers here are so large that groups like FSG are some of the only entities, not even people, but entities that can even afford to even think about something like this. So I think it's just it kind of highlights just like how kind of ridiculously expensive an organization like the Celtics is to purchase. And I guess the thing I did find most interesting besides that too is that the NBA is trying to like slow roll the rollout so that they can be like, and also slow roll the rollout of possibly expanding. So like, how much can we get out of new teams based on the precedent of something like this? I think those are sort of the two biggest reasons I had out of it.
Terp.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I look at it, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning, where none of these reported sources are coming from within the Celtics. The only two names that we're really hearing are FSG and Steve Pagliuca. The reason we're hearing Steve Pagliuca is because he explicitly said it. And he's also a minority owner now, but he is the only one that has actually indicated his interest in purchasing the team. With FSG, of course, people are just going to go over and speculate that because they own other sports franchises. Locally, they own the Red Sox. But you hear about this. We've done this twice now with FSG. It happened right when the sale was announced, and Sam Kennedy came out and said they have no interest in purchasing the Celtics, and now we're doing it again. So the biggest thing to me is, like, I don't understand the point of like some of this reporting because the Celtics clearly aren't saying anything. Now they're releasing, and it makes sense because the first bid is coming up. There's 4 or 5 individuals or groups involved. That makes sense because maybe he's trying to drive up the bidding process with it coming up this week. But the whole thing of like keep tying it back to FSG, it just seems so lazy to me. Like they've come out now twice and said they aren't doing it. And obviously you're dealing with this much money and maybe they will turn around and do it. But from everything they're saying, they aren't doing it. So I don't understand why people keep reverting back to this when a couple months ago, when the sale was announced, they said they weren't interested.
Yeah, my read on the entire report, if you want to call it that, or story that was published yesterday, is that it was an aggregation of the situation. It was someone from the national desk reading the Globe, looking at the updates, and I don't understand why that line was thrown in there. You don't put information like that out there without some kind of attribution. I'm not saying that you don't use sources that you keep mostly anonymous. That happens with this high level reporting all the time. But when you see that, it's couched in something to let you know the position of the person who's giving the information, which is why you say somebody with knowledge of the bidding process, somebody within the organization, a team source, like anything like that. And it was just this random line that sent everybody in a tizzy. And I agree with you, Terp. I might be wrong. We might find out, okay, 2 weeks from now, FSG is actually a leading bidder. And that could very well be the case. I just think if you're reading this report and thinking that that is exactly what's happening, I don't have confidence in it. Like, I don't have confidence in that. There's not enough there for me. And I know the reporters on the other side who are checking with their sources to get information about the Red Sox / FSG people tied in there. And they're like, no, it's still not the case. And I believe those people more than I believe what seems to be an aggregated story on the web. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know it's going to be a big topic. I'm sure we're going to address the bidders later this week, whatever information we get out of that. I don't know if their identities are going to be disclosed beyond PAGs. We'll see how this process unfolds. I think it's really interesting. I am very interested to see that they have 4 or 5 bidders who are willing to go up to $6 billion for a team that doesn't have an arena. Like, obviously, the Celtics are an extremely valuable franchise because of their history and because of the championships and the championship they just won. But we don't need to go over the payroll on the roster and the fact that they don't have an arena. These are big mitigating factors. So all that to say, I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, the first ever $500 million roster. That's what you're bidding on. It's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, and I guess just to close, does FG actually make any sense? Because like of all the franchises you mentioned already that they own, that's a lot of money that they're already investing in. So it's like, can even like they realistically afford to be a group that could purchase the Celtics again, a team without an arena, massive payroll coming up. I know why that name is thrown out, but realistically, I don't know how much sense it makes.
I don't know enough about their portfolio, like the holdings and how much money is behind all of it. I really only pay attention to what they do with the Red Sox. they make news with the Penguins and they make news with Liverpool and they make news with their golf little spinoff on the side. Like I don't know enough about FSG. I think just being in the region is an easy way for people to connect the dots. And I do believe that they've expressed interest in the past about an expansion team in the NBA and having some interest in that. But that's very clearly happening on the horizon. And I don't know when you could go pay $6 billion for an expansion team, say in Vegas, and have an arena out there and then reap tons of profits from that and the shows and everything that you can have in that, rather than continuing to pay rent to the Bruins and Delaware North. That part doesn't really make sense to me for what FSG in the past has described as what they want to do strategy-wise.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anyway, let's get to actual basketball because I think it's important to track that stuff. And as I said, we'll get more into it later in the week, or at least I know that I will, because I'm very interested in what's going to happen with this bidding process. But it's been up and down for the Celtics for a couple weeks now. You win one, you lose one, you lose the second night of a back-to-back when you're down both your starting bigs against the Atlanta Hawks, who are a super feisty team. But I want to get into Golden State last night because even going into the game, we once again got this comparison between Golden State and Boston and the way that these teams play and the way that they come back defending their championships. And Steve Kerr was asked about what it's like trying to defend a championship coming off of the win that Golden State had back in the day, winning back-to-backs. Here's what he said. I get a little bit like fatigued of the comparisons between Golden State and Boston and whether Boston can reach the heights that Golden State reached, or whether the new CBA is going to interfere with that. And is it all about 3-point shooting and keeping guys in their prime together and blah, blah, blah. I do like that perspective from Steve Kerr because that is a guy who's been there, who has failed to repeat at a time, but also actually repeated, which is really difficult to do in the modern NBA as you see the parity across the league. I don't think he said that like in a way that came off to me at all as condescending or anything. Like, don't worry about the Celtics. I think he almost is saying it in a way where it's a little bit of jealousy. Like he's looking there. They don't have Kuminga or Draymond Green, and they're hosting the world champ Celtics on MLK Day. It's a TNT game. And he's like almost like ready to get his butt kicked. And he's like, you guys should worry about me and my guys. Don't worry about the Celtics, because as much as it's up and down for them right now, like they're going to be fine.
Yeah, I guess what was funny is I think it was Noah Dalzell she asked Curry basically a similar question, and he had a very similar answer. Is like, look, the Celtics only lost 13 games. I think they're doing all right. And I mean, I guess the big thing I had thinking about last night, a big picture question, I was like, was this maybe their most impressive win of the season, like signature win? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of hard to pinpoint those in a 82 game season. But I was just thinking through, like maybe their win against Cleveland earlier this year at the Garden.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
I liked the Houston road trip win.
Yeah.
The second night of a back-to-back. That was a very gritty win.
Right. But a 40-point win again. I know Draymond wasn't playing. Kyle Anderson not playing. Podziemski, he's not had necessarily a great year, but also not playing. But anyways, still kicking off this West Coast road trip like that with a huge win like that. With the way that their season's going, that's a huge statement for them, I think.
Yeah, they needed that one. I mean, just because of the way they've been playing, particularly how they've been shooting the ball and their defensive lapses, which has been an issue over the last month and change. Like those weren't there yesterday. Like they weren't an issue, and they showed that what they can do when they play the way they're supposed to. Like they're learning how to get back to that. So that's important, and that's what they needed to do. They needed that kind of game, and just the way they were able to beat up on a bad team, because sometimes that invites complacency and they slip up a little bit against these injured teams, and the Warriors are down 4 rotation players, but for them to stay focused for 48 minutes and really get back to the style of play that we saw last year with just that attention to detail and that commitment to the recipe of winning. I mean, that's very encouraging, but like you said, they got to keep doing it. They've won back-to-back games just twice in their last 20 games. It's just been back and forth, and that needs to change.
It's interesting to me because that's very different, Terp, than who they were at this time last year when they, weren't losing 2 games in a row. They were very consistent. Of course, they hit bumps here and there, but I think that you're seeing a lot of things that are born out of the individual injuries that guys are dealing with. And we've been talking about that for a little bit now, but the one person that I have a real concern with at this point, and you guys can tell me if I'm being too jumping the gun on this or thinking of solutions about this. I am concerned about Jrue Holiday. I love Jrue Holiday and I love the presence that he brings to this team. I love his perimeter defense. He's such a steady guy. Like I can't say he was like my NBA player crush in terms of somebody I wanted on the team
Brad
for
Stevens
I don't
too.
know, 7 years. Right, right. And he's a came into the Celtics, was like a perfect fit. I was really taken aback by the decision making that he had at the end of that Hawks game in regulation when he had the goofy turnover on the pass from Tatum. There's 13 seconds left and it's out of bounds. You go, okay, that's a sloppy thing. But then the mental mistake that he commits on the other side is almost worse, where he fouled Trae Young with 3 seconds left and puts him on the line to tie it up and send them into overtime when the whole team has tired legs because they're on the second night of a back-to-back. And I wonder what you guys think about that. Is that an overreaction for me? I'm looking at his numbers and he's shooting at such less ability than he did last year, his percentages, especially from the 3-point line. Is he dealing with something that he should get more rest for? Is it something where we should look at Peyton Pritchard taking over some of the responsibilities that he has to carry? You certainly wouldn't get the perimeter defense that you get from Jrue Holiday, but when you want him to be his best self in the playoffs in late spring, how do you guys see this situation? I'll start with you on this one, Terp.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the shooting stuff. Like that's been an issue this year. And honestly, his numbers have kind of been tanked because of what he did the first half of the year. Because since coming back from injury, he's actually been pretty good shooting the ball, shooting 47% from the field, 41 from three. And he joked about it after one of the games, how this could be like a reverse thing, like him hurting his shoulder, injuring his shoulder could help him right the ship a little bit. But those kind of lapses, I mean, obviously the Jrue Holiday one, that's the most recent, and that was really bad because it cost them the game. But you just see, and maybe it is giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I think they've earned that. But look at what Jrue Holiday did last year against the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like game 3, the steal, game 4. One of the most underrated plays of the playoffs, I think, is when Tatum missed the fadeaway and Jrue grabbed the offensive rebound and let them dribble it out to win the game. That kind of stuff, like when they needed a winning play in the postseason, it was always Jrue Holiday that delivered it. And that was what was expected when they brought him in. They knew he was going to be that type of guy that's going to rise to the occasion in these big moments. So sure, it's easy to look, and I'm not, there's no beating around it. He hasn't been great in the regular season, his decision-making, all of it. But he's earned that reputation as somebody that's going to step up in the postseason and deliver when you need it most. And I still believe in that. And it kind of goes back to what Kerr was saying. I think he is one of the ones that have fallen victim to not really being mentally sharp night in and night out, which is a little bit disappointing because he's a guy that's been there and done that before. He was the only one that had championship experience before this between the Celtics, but it is something that is natural. As much as Joe Mazzulla wanted to have that target on their back and or right in their face in the middle of their eyes, like it's just not realistic for them to meet that call. And I think that Jrue Holiday has fallen prisoner to that, also coming off a long off season. So I think he'll be just fine come the postseason. But like you said, it is interesting because at times Joe Mazzulla has closed with Peyton Pritchard over him. So he's shown a willingness to get away from that.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was thinking sort of this in a similar way, but with different players, where I was thinking about because Derek White's numbers haven't necessarily been great over this last stretch either. And I was thinking, is there a world where you see where you would switch them out more? And like, because you could make an argument based on numbers right now that Pritchard, even though he's not scoring as many points as White has this season per game, is shooting better than Derek White. And while that may be true, the thing about White and Holiday is that just their defensive prowess, the stuff that doesn't necessarily show up as much. I think that, as Turp pointed out, that's a huge thing. And with Holiday too, that I agree with Turp where it's like, um, if there's anybody who has earned the benefit of the doubt, it's him. Like they brought him in. Yes, like you want him to score as anybody who's on the floor, you want them to score, but that is not like his main job for this team. You know what I mean? So I think it's it's kind of like where this whole team has been. I think throughout this stretch of like they're not shooting great, but I think come around April, May, June, that I would trust that would sort of even itself out in a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference semis and the Eastern Conference finals, potentially NBA finals. So no, I'm not too concerned. And again, it's also like the option, like who do you switch him out with? Again, it's Pritchard who is great offensively, but defensively that does create a bit of a hole there that that someone like Holiday is especially good at plugging, almost like nobody else at the guard position in the league.
Oh, definitely. And I think, again, Pritchard has gotten a lot better on defense. He is not who he was in the 2022 finals. He is a lot better as a defender.
Sure.
He's definitely more physical and presents a bigger challenge overall. But he's never going to be Jrue Holiday on the perimeter. And like you said, most guys aren't. But the Celtics, as you said, they got off to a hot start for this West Coast road trip. They're seeing the Lakers, which is super fun. They're seeing the Clippers, and they'll be back on Monday, I believe. They don't get back from this entire West Coast stretch until Monday when they'll be there with Houston. And it looks like EEI is getting a phone call over there for Justin.
Forgot to mute it. My bad.
No worries. I think that's our alert that we got to jump off. But as I said, we're going to be following the West Coast road trip as it goes on this week. And I, for one, will definitely be back with more looking at this bidding process because it's a huge news story. And hopefully we'll get a little bit more information about the direction of the franchise and the sale on Thursday. But until then, or I should say until tomorrow when we have another episode for you, you can find all our work on weei.com. You can find Esteban at GBH. And thanks for watching Slammed. If you enjoy us, please find us on YouTube. Please find us on Twitter. Find us on Instagram. Like, subscribe, comment, review. All of that helps us a bunch. And we'll catch you next time.